Alimata, Bandarvela. A library for the youngsters at the Kumbuk Oya Rural School between rural Polonnaruwa and Matale. Clean water for school children in Hambegamua, Munragala. Classrooms for students at the primary school in Ralapanava, Anuradhapura. The complete development of the Sindati Mata School in Kalpitiya, Puttalam. These are a few examples of Gammadda's action and impact. Thanks to you, the people. Gammadda. By the people. For the people.
Good evening and welcome. You're watching Primetime News on TV1, bringing you the news. I'm Thausha Kumar Singh. Let's take a look at your headlines for tonight.
News First Headlines. Main sponsor.
Valuable Finance, best finance company.
KDK, the leader in indoor air quality. KDK, the reliable fan.
Is the government preparing for a constitutional ploy? A revelation from former President Maithripala Sirisena. Elections will not be postponed for political reasons. A statement from Minister Namal Rajapaksa. Demand exceeds supply. Risk of power cuts tonight. Sri Lankan fishermen surround 2 Indian trawlers. 21 Indian fishermen taken into custody of the Navy. Train accident in Rilamba, Ratgama claims the lives of 4 members of the same family.
News First Headlines. Main sponsor.
Valuable Finance, best finance company.
KDK, the leader in indoor air quality. KDK, the reliable fan.
Top story tonight. Former President Maithripala Sirisena today said that the government is preparing for a constitutional ploy. He made this statement while speaking on the 10 Questions program.
ජනාධිපති ඡන්දයට අවුරුදු 2.5ක් තියෙනවා. අඩු වශයෙන් අවුරුදු 2.5ක් තියෙනවා.
There is at least another 2.5 years for the next presidential election. I saw in the papers that the government is preparing to bring forward another constitutional reform. The way I see it, I think the government is preparing for another constitutional ploy. I believe the next election that we have to face is a parliamentary election.
පාර්ලිමේන්තු මැතිවරණයක් වෙන්න පුළුවන් කියලායි මම හිතන්නේ.
Meanwhile, after 1 year of military rule in Myanmar, millions of people are resisting a return to repression and isolation. Foreign media reported that millions are unemployed, food and fuel prices are surging, poverty is rising, and the country's education, COVID-19 healthcare and banking sectors are verging on collapse. Reports have also emerged that telecom and internet service providers had been secretly ordered months before the coup to install intercept technology that would allow the army to eavesdrop on the communications of citizens. Fearful of being tracked, citizens have turned off the location settings on their phones and used encrypted messaging apps, VPNs and foreign SIM cards to communicate and organize protests and document human rights abuses in the country. As a result, Myanmar is seeing increasingly deadly battles between its military and organized groups of armed civilians. Many of those fighting in the military are young people who have put their lives on hold since the junta seized power a year ago. Meanwhile, Minister Namal Rajapaksa emphasized that there is no plan to postpone elections in the country due to political reasons. No, the elections should not be postponed. This is not the first time elections have been postponed, as the parliamentary elections were also postponed for 8 months due to the COVID-19 situation in the country. But these elections will not be postponed due to political reasons.
Also making headlines tonight, 21 Indian fishermen who illegally encroached into the sea of Sri Lanka were apprehended by the Navy with the support of Sri Lankan fishermen. 20 of the Indian fishermen were taken into custody of police, while one person who tested positive for COVID-19 was directed for treatment based on an order by court. The two Indian fishing trawlers had entered the Sea of Sri Lanka at about 11 last night and were spotted about 2 nautical miles off the coast of Point Pedro. The Indian fishing trawlers were surrounded by the Sri Lankan fishing boats and later handed over to Sri Lanka Navy. According to our correspondent, the Indian fishing trawlers were surrounded for about an hour. The Navy then arrived at the scene. The Indian fishermen and the 2 trawlers were taken into the custody of the Sri Lanka Navy and brought to the shore. As the Indian trawlers were attempting to evade naval units with their aggressive maneuvers, they also caused damages to the SLN fast attack craft. Officials attached to the office of the Deputy High Commissioner of India in Jaffna had met with the arrested Indian fishermen this morning. In a tweet, the Indian High Commission in Colombo said officials of the Consular General of Jaffna met with 21 Indian fishermen and provided consular assistance, including immediate relief materials, phone calls with relatives and other forms of assistance. This incident was reported against a backdrop where several protests were staged in Jaffna against the illegal encroachments by Indian fishermen into Sri Lankan waters and fishing in the Sea of Sri Lanka using illegal fishing methods. Although Minister of Fisheries Douglas Devananda attempted to intervene in this matter during a protest staged in Point Pedro yesterday, this was the response he got from the protesting fishermen. Meanwhile, the bodies of 2 Sri Lankan fishermen who were reported missing after they went to sea from Vadamarachi had washed up on the Maradankani coast yesterday. The local fishermen suspect encroaching Indian fishermen connected to the deaths of these 2 fishermen. Local fishermen staged protests against this incident as well. This was the situation that arose when the Minister of Fisheries, Douglas Devananda, visited the area this afternoon.
A cabinet paper will be presented to provide compensation to the nets that were damaged during this incident. I am of the opinion that trawler boats must be stopped. They are asking for 2 to 3 years for this. I informed them that I cannot give them a single second. The boats that were seized are in good condition. I will give some of those boats to you. You can go and capture them or ram them. You cannot go in small boats and do anything. This is my plan. I have not asked you not to. I spoke with the President as well. The Security Council is meeting today. The President said that he will advise officials to arrest them. Those things will be done properly from today. That is all I can say. You must give us a written undertaking that things like this will not happen in the future. We cannot believe things that you say like this.
The fact of fishing, which has raised significant protests here, has been seen by the governor himself at sea. But the issue goes back over a while, and there have been bilateral discussions ongoing for a long time, and it continues. So I would like to say that there is goodwill on both sides, and the discussions are ongoing. As we speak today, there have been several demands by different groups. For all groups, the message has been, please do come and talk to us, air your grievances.
On to a story that made its rounds today. State Minister Dr. Nalaka Godaheva was confronted by passengers this morning for delaying a bus service. The State Minister faced strong opposition from passengers when inspecting buses that were to operate from the Manning Market in Colombo.
A new bus service plying across Veliveria, Kadawatha, Handala, Gampaha, Nittambo to Colombo across the Manning Market began to operate this morning. The bus service is aimed at providing transport to vendors and customers who visit the Manning Market. The ceremonial launch of the new program was held today.
Yeah, Minister, we want to go to later and all that. Wait over there. We want to take time.
Finance Minister Basil Rajapaksa was acquitted and released from the case filed over printing of 5 million lit calendars, also known as almanacs, by spending 29.4 million rupees in funds belonging to the DISINFECTANT department during the 2015 presidential election. Former Director General of the DISINFECTANT Development Department, Kitsiri Ranawaka, was also acquitted and released from the case.
The case was filed against Minister Basil Rajapaksa and Kitsiri Ranawaka over the printing of 5 million lit calendars or almanacs by spending 29.4 million rupees in funds belonging to the DISINFECTANT department during the run-up to the 2015 presidential election. Colombo High Court Judge Damit Thotawatta acquitted and released the accused from the case without calling for evidence from the defence. The judge had pointed out in his judgment that the money of the DISINFECTANT department had been used legally for a legal purpose. The judge had also stated in open court that the fifth indictment against the suspect had no basis. Court acquitted the two defendants and also ordered for the travel bans imposed on the defendants to be lifted. Meanwhile, Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna parliamentarian Jagath Kumara, speaking at a media briefing today, said that Basil Rajapaksa had distributed money from the Samurdhi Fund among the poor. He also revealed that the government had withdrawn a sum of 50 billion rupees from the Samurdhi Fund. When a case cannot be proved in court, it gets thrown out. Basil Rajapaksa distributed the DISINFECTANT fund among the poor. He printed almanacs and distributed them. Those are usual things done by the government. Therefore, there is no evidence to convict him of a crime on these matters. No, that figure is wrong. In reality, the government has withdrawn a total of 50 billion rupees. Close to 7.3 billion was repaid at the start of the year in January. The remaining should be methodically paid back. Initially, 36 billion was taken out to pay the 5,000 rupees. There is a delay. The President and the Prime Minister must intervene and reimburse this money of the poor people. Meanwhile, the High Court trial at bar declined to accept the preliminary objections to dismiss the case filed against Minister Mahindananda Alutgamage and the former chairman of Sathosan, Nalin Fernando, on charges that they imported checkers boards and carom boards worth 53 million rupees and used it for a political campaign. The case filed by the Bribery Commission was set for trial. Meanwhile, Minister Namal Rajapaksa also appeared before the Colombo High Court. He appeared in a case filed against him and 4 other defendants and the Gowers Corporation on charges of money laundering. The case was postponed to the 10th of March.
Will there be power cuts tonight? Stay tuned to find out right after this short commercial break.
News First, main sponsor.
Sun All-Purpose Disinfectant Spray.
Valuable Finance, best finance company.
One disinfectant to keep your hands, home surfaces, electronic devices and personal belongings safe from bacteria, virus and fungi. Sri Lanka's first SLS certified disinfectant, now with lemon fresh and ice pine fresh fragrances. Sun All-Purpose Disinfectant Spray.
Providing science education to children in far-flung villages of the country. Tech Bus.
Organized by Slit Institute.
Tech Bus.
Main sponsor. Lit Knowledge University, challenging convention and redefining education.
Welcome back to the news. The Ceylon Electricity Board says that there is a possibility of power cuts tonight as there is a shortage of 100 megawatts in the power capacity in the national grid of the country. Meanwhile, the Public Utilities Commission of Sri Lanka has informed the Ceylon Electricity Board not to supply power to large-scale electricity consumers tonight in an attempt to solve the power crisis in the country. Although the third generator of the Norochole power plant, which has a capacity of 270 megawatts, was connected back to the national grid, the generator suffered another breakdown this morning. The Kalanithissa Sojits power plant, which has a capacity of 130 megawatts, has been removed from the grid as well due to maintenance purposes. The barge-mounted power plant in Colombo and the Sapugaskanda power station are also unable to generate power due to the lack of fuel. These two power plants combined generate 104 megawatts. Accordingly, the power plants that are not operating at present are capable of generating a total of 484 megawatts. Against such a backdrop, the Ceylon Electricity Board has predicted that the total demand for power tonight would be around 2,750 megawatts.
What we proposed to the Ceylon Electricity Board was to inform these large-scale electricity consumers to use their standby generators from 6 to 9 today. We also asked the consumers to limit the consumption of power tonight. If not, the CEB will have to cut power for 10, 15 and 30 minutes on a divisional level to strike a balance in the system. However, some areas in Wattala and its coastal line in which power is supplied by the Lanka Electricity Company expected a power outage from 2:30 to 3:30 this afternoon. A spokesperson at the Public Utilities Commission said that the Commission had not granted permission for that. There was a shortage of 200 megawatts of power to the national grid last month due to the reduction of the water levels in the reservoirs in close proximity to certain power plants in the country. On top of the constant breakdowns of the thermal power plants, the other challenge Sri Lanka had to face was the severe lack of fuel in the country. Thereafter, the President ordered the Treasury last week to pay the 93 billion rupees the CEB owes the CPC to maintain an uninterrupted power supply in the country. However, that issue remains unresolved even as of now. Against this backdrop, the Minister of Power made a request from the Cabinet yesterday to make an emergency purchase of power from 3 private power plants for 3 years. These 3 power plants in question, which stirred controversy in the past, generate a total of 170 megawatts of power. 2 of these power plants are operated by furnace oil. The agreement that was reached between the Ceylon Electricity Board and these 3 power plants expired in April last year. When permission was sought to renew these agreements, the 3-member co-cabinet committee that was appointed to look into the matter recommended to renew the agreement with the 3 power plants for a period of only 6 months. None of the agreements that were reached with these 3 private power plants in question has been permitted by the Public Utilities Commission and has been pronounced as illegal by the Auditor General and the COPE. Questions were raised regarding the proposal that was put forward to the Cabinet to renew these agreements at the Cabinet media briefing this morning. We have agreed on a policy level if there is a need for emergency power purchasing. But one condition that these private power plants have outlined is that the agreement must be reached for 3 years. The government is not in agreement with that. The President also informed the Minister to reach an agreement to adhere to the authorized time frames and purchase power only when it is necessary. The issue we have at hand is the shortage of diesel. There is no issue pertaining to power. We have more than enough generators. The problem is we do not have sufficient fuel. If we have fuel, there won't be a need to purchase power as well.
Meanwhile, the cabinet granted approval to purchase 450,000 barrels of crude oil for the Sapugaskanda oil refinery from the Terra Navis Group in Cyprus for a loan scheme of 180 days. The Terra Navis Group, based in Cyprus, has been selected without calling for any proposals, and the proposal put forward by this foreign company has been evaluated by a special standing procurement committee. Also, cabinet approval was granted to obtain a supply of 40,000 metric tons of diesel and petrol from the Indian oil company yesterday. What is the true phase of the power crisis that Sri Lanka is facing at the moment? If the obstacle at hand is fuel, do these private power plants have sufficient stocks of fuel to generate power? Or are we witnessing a master plan in motion to loot public funds by these emergency power purchases in the guise of a diesel shortage?
While people suffer as a result of the power crisis, farmers who have been severely affected due to the decline in the agricultural sector caused by sudden and rash decisions took to the streets. Farmers in Mahiyangane staged a protest today demanding the government to provide compensation for the damages caused. The protest was organized by the All Ceylon Farmers Federation. Farmers marched along the Padya Talava Road. The protesters, who marched across all 4 main roads in the city, finally staged a demonstration by the clock tower. We have cultivated our fields using the fertilizer that you provided. The crops have not grown well. Corn cultivations are destroyed, although it is only the farmers who are affected now. In a few more months, these shops will close down. These three-wheelers will be parked at home. Finance companies will close down. Cases will begin to pile up in court. We would like to send a message to reverse this decision that has destroyed the farmers.
හානි වෙන වී කිලෝකට මම රුපියල් 25ක් දෙනවලු 25 ගහගනින් උඹලගේ අහවල්ලකි අක්කරයකට රුපියල්.
They must at least pay more than 100,000 rupees as compensation per acre of land. Just like this corn plant, this government too is barren. They should not pay compensation with taxpayer rupees. They must pay compensation with their private assets.
ජලික බෝතල් අරගෙන ඒ බෝතල් වලින් ගෙවන්න ඕනි.
News First, People's Fight.
මේ කරල් ඉතින් මේවා අරන් අපි මොකද කරන්න කියලා අහන්නකො කියන්න කි දේවල් තියෙනවා ඉතින් මට යකා නගිනවා මේවා කියන්න ගියා.
The sudden decision by the government to implement an organic fertilizer policy and the subsequent lack of fertilizer has resulted in the Sri Lankan rice market teeming with Indian rice at the moment. The incident surrounding the Chinese fertilizer ship was also a pivotal incident that led to these circumstances. When the National Plant Quarantine Service had confirmed the presence of harmful bacteria in the fertilizer samples, the government had gone ahead and opened letters of credit for payments to be made for the fertilizer stocks. It was startling to see that the decision by the government came when the Chinese company in question had stated that they cannot provide fertilizer as per the standards set out by Sri Lanka, and that they would cancel the agreement without any compensation. The National Plant Quarantine Service rejected the fertilizer samples on 2 occasions. However, a ship carrying the fertilizer departed to the country, changed its name and entered the Sea of Sri Lanka. When the country rejected the fertilizer, the Chinese company reminded that the letters of credit were issued and the payment was unavoidable. The Chinese embassy in Sri Lanka intervened and took steps to blacklist the People's Bank over this incident. Sri Lankan authorities bowed down to the pressure and ended up paying $6.9 million to the Chinese company, and the shipment was taken back by the Chinese company. The People's Bank was removed from the blacklist. In its latest turn of events, the standards of Sri Lanka are to be adjusted to accommodate the importation of Chinese fertilizer. What is the real reason behind this desperate need to import fertilizer from China. Is there a serious financial transaction behind the Chinese fertilizer TDM? The truth always prevails in the end.
News First, People's Fight.
On to a developing story from the political landscape of Sri Lanka now. Various views have been expressed from various factions here in Sri Lanka regarding the incident where eggs were thrown at a meeting organized by the Janata Vimukti Peramuna.
We strongly condemned what happened. Sri Lanka is a democratic country. We have made it a point to ensure the public's right to voice their opinions. We express our regret regarding this incident. As a government, we have instructed the relevant authorities to enforce the law without any delay. We have to investigate the matter to find out if the JVP itself carried out the attack on themselves. They are a party that had many involvements with public property, houses and tires in the past. So a party like that could be involved in something like this as well. Did they do this themselves? Also, according to the Janata Vimukti Peramuna, people have now understood the reality. This could be how the public is responding to the JVP after truly understanding the reality. Our party has nothing to do with this incident. We strongly condemn this. It was the frontline socialists who beat up the JVP with poles, broke their hands and legs and chased them out of Sri Jayawardhanapura, Kalaniya and Colombo. Now they have joined hands with the JVP. This is what they did. I believe that is an extension of those incidents. The Podujana Peramuna does not need to attack the JVP. I do not think Prasanna would have done something like that. I feel that this was something that was done by the frontline socialists. The frontline socialists attacked the JVP at all the universities. Anura Kumara and his friends are not allowed to go into Kalaniya and Sri Jayawardhanapura universities.
The lawyers of the National People's Front responded to views expressed by the members of the government regarding the incident. If a proper statement has not yet been taken after a cabinet minister requested the president to take swift action regarding this matter, then there is an issue there. The person who is directly involved in this and led the attack is there in these photographs captured at Avantgarde. He is part of a private armed force. An Avantgarde employee is the person who is directly involved in this. So it is clear. Prasanna Ranatunga got excited and released a statement. The cabinet spokesperson released a statement trying to avoid this issue. We clearly state that the government is behind this attack. The person who was behind this attack and wanted to achieve their narrow political goals, should be the person who is held responsible for this incident. The president is responsible for this. If the culprits are not revealed, we will have to believe that this was something done by the government. This company is in possession of all the most sophisticated weaponry in the world. This is a private army. What is the next step going to be if the government could not find out who was responsible for this? It is the Ministry of Defence that issues the license for this company to bear arms. The issue is they could place a bomb next time around. We saw what happened between 2010 and 2015. We saw how private armies and mercenaries functioned in the recent past. If they can do this to a political party, just imagine what they can do to the general public. That is what we fear.
In more local news, investigations are underway to arrest 2 policemen connected to an incident where 2 groups of policemen clashed in Abepussa.
The first clash took place 3 days ago. A police officer and inspector of the Commission of Bribery or Corruption and the traffic OIC of the Maravilla Police were travelling in a van. The OIC of the Gampaha Police Anti-Corruption Unit and 2 others were travelling in another vehicle. The cause of the clash was a traffic offence. The altercation escalated into an exchange of blows. The Maravilla Traffic OIC was admitted to the Maravilla Hospital, while the Gampaha Anti-Corruption Unit OIC was admitted to the Vatupitiwala Hospital.
As I said earlier, many factions many factions expressed many different views regarding the egg throwing incident at the Janata Vimukti Peramuna. Following views were expressed by the opposition leader Sajith Premadasa. Let's take a look.
This is the stance of the opposition leader on this matter.
They came to throw eggs at the leader of the Janata Vimukti Peramuna. They also came to assault the grandson of J.R. Jayawardena, who is a member of a local government. What does these two incidents show us? During the last 2 years, there has been a significant degradation in our society, and our country has significantly declined in many aspects. We have declined politically, morally, in our policies. Our country cannot move forward like this. Is there any issue that is solved by throwing eggs? What does the country get out of this? What do these people get out of this? They can only get some temporary entertainment by doing something like this. Do these actions help in reducing poverty? Does it increase the economic growth rate? Does it increase computer literacy? I see that today, lies, corruption, theft, deception, thuggery, political hatred, jealousy are reigning supreme. We need to change this.
The opposition leader expressed these views while attending the 11th phase of the Sakwala program, where computer equipment and computer screens were donated to the Angunochchiya Mahavidyalaya in Madavachchiya. The supply of power to the area was interrupted during the event, and power was provided through a generator during the opposition leader's address.
I believe that by arriving here, there is one bad thing that happened. The power was disconnected. I apologize for that. I know the power was cut off because I came here. As soon as I leave, the power supply will be restored.
The Business Standard website of India reported that Sri Lanka's inflation rate surged past Pakistan to make it the fastest in Asia, stoked by failed harvests, import restrictions to conserve dwindling foreign exchange reserves, and high global prices of key commodities. Sri Lanka's food inflation rose to a record 25% in January from 22.1% in December 2021.
The latest government statistics also confirmed that inflation increased sharply. Consumer prices rose 14.2% in January. From a year earlier, it was 12.1% in December. The Department of Census and Statistics points out that the main reason for the increase in inflation is the rapid rise in food prices. The department said prices of several items including rice, milk powder, sugar, fruits and bread had risen significantly. Rising costs in several sectors including non-food items, fuel prices, transport fares, gas, housing, education, restaurants and hotels also contributed to the rise in inflation in January. Newsfirst looked into the price fluctuations of several essential items. The price of a kilogram of red rice has increased by 65 rupees during the past year. This is a 68% increase in prices. The price of a kilogram of flour, which was an alternative to rice, has increased by 60 rupees during that period, a 57% increase. Dal, a staple food of the majority of the country, has increased by 98 rupees per kilogram, which is a 57% increase during the past year. A kilogram of sugar has increased by 25%, a value of 28 rupees. The price of a litre of coconut oil has increased by 32%. The price of a 400-gram packet of milk powder has gone up by 160 rupees, a packet of butter by 60 rupees, and a box of cheese by 30 rupees.
A considerable amount of people in Colombo visit supermarkets in order to purchase essential goods. And very recently we have seen that inflation is continuing to rise in the country. Yesterday the central bank announced that inflation in terms of food had hit 24%. If we put that into context, what we can understand is that if a person had spent about 200 rupees to purchase certain goods in January last year, today that particular individual has to spend more than 1,000 rupees on the same amount of goods. As part of conducting an experiment to find out the cost of goods in the market, Newsfirst visited a supermarket today with 5,000 rupees in hand to find out whether we can purchase essential goods that are sufficient for a week. We had a few observations, one being the fact that there was a shortage of essential goods in the market, but at the same time the cost of goods that were present in the market had increased by 50 or 60% compared to the prices last year. It must also be noted that 5,000 rupees was not sufficient to purchase essential goods for a family that is required for a week. I'm Hassan Shazuli reporting for Newsfirst.
In a cost push inflation, mainly the people who will suffer from it is the people who are getting monthly salaries or daily income, because their income has not increased. Last month, if they live within 100 rupee, now to get the same happiness or to get the same living standard, they need around 115 rupees. So that's what it's mean. We know the recent example we got from the Zimbabwe in the recent past. We know that every 13 seconds the price has changed in Zimbabwe. So still we have not reached that level, but we have some signals that we are going into that direction. So we have to make precautionary actions immediately to stop reaching for a hyperinflation.
Is the government going for an IMF program to restructure the debt of the country? Minister Dr. Ramesh Pathirana responded to this question at the Cabinet media briefing today.
No, there was no specific discussion about said topic during yesterday's conversation in the cabinet meeting rather, but that was a constant discussion that we've been speaking about that. Yes, we are open to all the institutions and all the ideas. So we have been speaking to IMF as well over a period of time, and it's our government during His Excellency Mahinda Rajapaksa's time which has obtained the highest amount of loan from International Monetary Fund. We are trying to manage the situation. Also, at the same time, we are trying to restructure. We are in discussion with all the agencies. Hopefully, we should be able to manage the current crisis within 6 months' time down the line.
Chief Economist for the South Asia region of the World Bank, Hans Timmer, says the balance of payment issues coupled up with fiscal challenges did not originate overnight. He made these remarks during an event named Sri Lanka's Growth Strategy 2022 in Colombo last evening.
Sri Lanka already for decades has the twin deficits, and so as now globally monetary policy is tightening, commodity prices are going up. It is important to realize that these balance of payments problems and the fiscal challenges, they did not originate overnight. It took many decades to come to this position, and they will not be solved overnight.
Despite the 500 million which was repaid in January, from sovereign point of view, we have something between 6 to 7 billion of external debt payable this year. But more importantly, if we look at the next 4 years, the average annual foreign debt repayment is something in the range of around 4.5 billion. And this in comparison to the 8 years from 2010 to 18 was just about half of that. So this and it's not just a 1 year's issue, it's a problem which I think we will have to manage for the next 5 to 6 years.
Health officials are urging people to avoid non-essential trips over the long weekend as corona infections continue to rise.
We cannot confirm right now as to if the Omicron variant is in this stage according to the definition of the term community spread. However, we have to conduct ourselves presuming that this variant is spreading among the community. What are the symptoms of the Omicron variant? According to clinical data, headache, cold, sore throat, shortness of breath, fever, symptoms of pneumonia. However, health officials say that those infected with the Omicron variant have far fewer symptoms than those infected with the Delta variant. Why are we seeing a surge in COVID-19 cases? At present, health guidelines are not being followed. The public only stick to wearing the mask, while other health guidelines are not followed. Therefore, we will see an even faster increase in the number of cases in the coming months. What should the public do? The vaccination programs should be strengthened. Educate the public on following the proper health guidelines and properly monitor as to if these health guidelines are being adhered to.
Foreign Minister Professor G.L. Peiris has refuted the alleged purchase of weapons from North Korea. A statement from the Foreign Ministry noted that the attention of the Foreign Ministry was drawn to a news item appearing on the Newsfirst.lk website titled, and I quote, "We purchased weapons from North Korea using black market dollars by Minister Basil Rajapaksa, end quote, dated on the 31st of January 2022. The Foreign Ministry says Professor G.L. Pires had spoken in this regard with his cabinet colleague, Finance Minister Basil Rajapaksa, who has, and I quote once again, categorically denied the comments attributed to him in the said news item, end quote. Yesterday, Newsfirst quoted excerpts from an interview published last Sunday, the 30th of January 2022, in the Divina newspaper, where Minister Basil Rajapaksa is quoted as saying that they acquired weapons from North Korea during the civil war using dollars purchased from the black market. On to a tragic note this evening, 4 members of the same family died when a 3-wheeler collided with a train. You can watch the full video on our Newsfirst Facebook and YouTube page. The full story is available on our website www.newsfirst.lk as well. With that, we wrap up tonight's news. My name is Tavusha Kumar Singh. Have yourself a pleasant night.